Hi, good evening, class. My name is SHANQ and I'll be your trainer today. So just a little bit of background of me. I'm a software engineer and I've been working for Trust Maven for about 5, 6 years now since we started it. And my focus has been on moving regulatory tech forward. So that's what Trust Maven is all about. It's a compliance technology business. All right, next, let's take attendance. Do we have Mika in today?
Yes, I'm in.
Thank you. Is Jaden in today?
Yes.
Thank you. Before we start our class, let's go through the class rules as usual. First of all, please silence your phone so you don't disturb. Next, be on time. Thank you for being here on time, indeed. And third is to prepare your own stationaries. Please make sure that you have them handy so you can take notes throughout the sharing today. And the fourth, be eager and ready to learn because I do have a lot to share. Hopefully, you can pick up as much as possible. And the fifth is to keep the training room clean, as when you come, it's clean, and when you leave, it should also remain clean and tidy. Right? Are you guys clear on the rules? Yes, then yeah, before we start, may I check, have you all taken your dinner?
Yes.
Yes, taken.
Okay, hopefully it's not too full for you guys that you all feel sleepy. If you do, try to keep yourself awake. Okay, so let me go through again for the course today you're attending. It is on 25th of November 2025, and it will start now at around 8 p.m. and it should end around 8:30 p.m. Okay, before we start the class today, I have a question to kickstart the session, and it's what you see on the screen. Do you know about interpreting app prototype requirements? Any clue?
No.
I can really see that you guys are not clear what this is about, but it is exactly why I think you're here today. And leading from this question, it is the topic of the day, which is interpreting prototype requirements for fast, accurate builds. So before we dive deeper into building the application, we first need to learn about the aims that we derive from this title, right? First is to establish the prototype requirements. And then once we have the requirements, we go to number 2 is to derive the timeline. And subsequently to number 3 is about the work that you need to derive to produce the prototype. And finally, also the people who are responsible and involved in the project through the RACI allocation. And subsequently, number 4 and number 5, which is on the wireframing, as well as drawing the user flow, it's about preparing the documents to pass it on to developers for development, in short. But we'll dive into more details of each of these sections in a while. Okay, the first aim, which is to establish prototype requirements foundation. When I dive deeper into this, so 1.1 is the value of prototyping. So before we talk about value of prototyping, we need to first understand what is prototype, right? It's in very short and very simple way to understand. It's a throwaway version of the product that you want to build, right? And why do we do prototype? There are basically just 4 main takeaway or values that you really want to do prototype for. First of all is to, I would say, look at the top right to align dev, design, and business minds. Because in a prototype or any app building, you involve a lot of parties, starting from the people who do the marketing, from the people who design the app, and to the people who actually build the application. So prototyping will actually produce something that will help everybody see the same picture, right? So with that coming in, you will fulfill the second value of the prototyping, which is to review the requirement gaps of the prototype. Because it's easy to imagine something you want to build, but until you actually build it, you will start to see a lot of things that you never consider properly, right? And subsequently with the prototype, you'll be able to get feedback from your users very early in the stage. So you don't have to build a full product before you start getting feedback or what's wrong with the product or your design, right? So that's why at the end, I think the most valuable part of prototyping is to fix things at RM10 and not 1,000. So basically, it's just about saving costs. Right, jumping to the next one is the centrality of requirements. Because in one of our, the keyword of this title or today's class is requirement. So what all this requirement is about. Right, in short, if you look on the left, it's about a promised outcome in writing. So I would take, for example, one day you spend time talking to your friends about building some very awesome, maybe fintech application. It is only going to become all talk if you don't pen it down and write it into a document that you can later on follow through to create the actual things you want to do, right? If it's all talk, nothing will become materialized, right? So on the right, you see an example of sample requirement document. This is an example of the first document, an official one that you would generally prepare after you think about the app and all the features you want to build. And you would generally write this down here as a start for planning and execution of the project until you produce your prototype. So here. So in the documents, it's going to get a little bit more technical, but I want to there are a lot more documents than these three things here, but I want to just scope it down to just three main things that you should pick up right now. And the first one is a software requirements specification. Generally, we just refer it as SRS. The next is the feature brief, and finally the storyboard. So looking at all these names, maybe they are very stranger to you, but let me help you understand from the perspective, more layman term, right? So the SRS is basically just a very high level requirements, high level expectation of the product you want to build. And feature brief is more like also pretty high level of the description, a business level description of the thing you want to build. Maybe I can give you an example right now is one of the feature I want to have, let's say I want to build a fintech product, is I want to allow the user to apply credit card, use credit card, track credit card in a single page or something like that. So a very high level description of entire domain of a feature. And the third one is a storyboard. Storyboard is very technical. It goes to the screen by screen design of the application you want to build. And in today's class, the focus is more about creating mobile application. So let's keep that in the context, right? We are thinking about the perspective of building a mobile app. So how these three things relate to each other, and about following the title, how deep they go. So the SRS is much like looking at a country level map. You very zoom out, you can't see the details, but you can see the shape and the borders, what states we have, right? Then if you zoom in more, it will become feature brief. Feature brief, you can compare it to zooming into a state to see how many districts or different cities within the state. And finally, the storyboard is further zoom in to visualize the street, naming the street, design, the flow, and everything. So if I were to compare it to app building, I would say if you look at the SRS level, it's just a high level description saying I want to build a fintech product that is, allow for easy online credit card application. Then feature brief will be going into very specific domain of a banking solution, for example, credit card, and for example, deposits management. And storyboard will be going into even more detailed screen by screen design of, say, one of the domain, which is credit card. Like you have the screen to manage your different credit cards, to see another screen to see the credit card transactions, or another screen to arrange for payment of credit card. So that's how from very high level description up to a very specific design and implementation for your prototype design and building. Right, so after deriving from SRS, you derive a bunch of feature brief, and then finally your storyboard screen. So you have a lot of smaller items you start to write out. And it's important that you need to start producing your requirement link map. So what is this? As you can see, it's a table, but this table is here to help you link the smaller details back to the SRS. So remember, SRS is the main document, is the mother document, for example. So one of the main purpose here is to make sure whatever you do from feature brief to the story screen, they can always relate back to your SRS document. So you don't simply just start to imagine your own storyboard screen. For example, for a banking, you want to create a screen for a mini game, but this mini game is not inside your SRS. So from this, as a person who manage a project, I can see, hey, this mini game screen, it somehow I cannot find the item in the SRS. So from here, you know that you are trying to do things outside of the scope. So that's one of the purpose. The second one I would say probably is to make sure whatever you do when you link back to the items inside your SRS, you can know which SRS item that you forgot to produce the feature brief and also to produce the storyboard screen. So basically, it helps you to track every item from the upstream to the downstream level, right? And why are you doing this? As what I mentioned, I'll read out here, is to ensure every screen you build trace to a written requirements and preventing costly gold plating. I would say more importantly, you prevent missed features. Okay. So next one, you have all the features brief derived. You have roughly an estimate of what you want to build, basically, if I were to put it this way. The next you want to do is to estimate the timeline you need to deliver this prototype, right? And inside this, you need to first identify your milestone and task links. So what are these? So it's about finding all the dates, right, that you can find on the documents, and based on the task that you need to build, finding the chronological order of the the parts of the prototype you want to build along with whatever important dates indicated in your SRS or even in your contract to ultimately derive a schedule, right? So the moment you receive the document, you go through all this, you can roughly tell the people who assign you this prototype project and say, we can deliver this by maybe end of the year, mid of the year, or something like that. So you have an estimate of a timeline. But again, this is an estimate lah. So coming to 2.1, some would say, okay, timeline, right? How do you find it? Again, I mentioned you can find them in your SRS and in your contract. So all this in the black and white paper. You just have to look at them very carefully. They tend to be written very clearly. But if next thing I want to highlight here is that if you cannot find the dates very clearly stated when you must deliver what, right? Then it's also important that you ask from your sponsor or the project lead to find out the dates, right? Because hard dates, which I'm going to talk here, actually also equivalent to fixed dates, it's something very important to follow through. And why? Because some of the dates written or at least mentioned inside your contract or in the SRS is important for compliance matters, likely, right? Otherwise, it would have been some kind of promise to customers or some kind of commitment to a certain, for example, point B here, an expo that you have to present the product to show a demo, right? Because things like an expo, they will not do a second round for you if you missed it. And hence, these are the timeline, the dates that you have no choice but to respect. Okay. So other than fixed dates, another thing you have to deal with when you're in this project is to deal with the soft dates. But soft dates is something more of an internal things, right? It's something that can be adjusted, but you still must be able to set up these dates so that you can measure your performance. I would say most of the time you use it to measure your performance, ensure that you cover the things you need to cover, like building app, testing the app, and then fixing bugs, this kind of thing. So you set all these things internally so that you make sure whatever you have planned is able to accommodate whatever the fixed dates demands of you, right? You see, there's some of good points that you can see, setting dates for design review with your UX team or development work review meetings, right? These are all internal things. They are not hard. If some things bad really happen, they can be adjusted, right? All right, so 2.2 is my advice to everybody planning a timeline is you must be a bit more conservative in your planning. So if whatever you plan tells you that you can complete them in 1 month, I'd say, or 30 days, right? I'd say you better buffer them with about 15 to 25%. But usually just say 20%, right? For 1 month, you need to budget another 1 week, for example, to commit the date. And why? And from my experience in app development, we tend to be overconfident on what we can build and tend to underestimate the problems or the bugs or the issues that arise during the development process. So whatever we estimate earlier is better to be more conservative, to add on another 20% time at least to the time you budgeted and estimated. So you make sure you have time to fix problems. But let's say you finish everything on time, that's good. You finish your work earlier. Nothing bad will happen, right? So here, just want to point out, you probably don't need to set buffer to everything, but at least the most critical tasks, you must set some time to ensure. The critical tasks here we are referring to are things that tend to be the things that you don't know very clearly the requirements, the feature are a bit fuzzy, or the features that requires external parties involvement where you cannot control how other parties work, right? You cannot determine how soon they can do their part for you, and hence the importance of adding the buffers, right? So after getting all the dates, you should start planning or put them into a Gantt chart, which is basically the timeline that you're seeing here to develop each thing. So you put together, you should be able to make sure whatever you want to build and all the timeline you derive for each of the feature and components fit into the hard deadline that you get from studying the contract or the SRS document. Now, to produce this thing, I have a bunch of application out there that are mostly free that you can use to just key in the feature, the timeline, and you start seeing the chart that is shown here. So one of my favorite here is actually Notion, or you can use Excel will be another good and easy to use as well. But do feel free to explore on your own and see what you like. I don't think there's any recommended hard practice that in the market that you must use a certain tool. As long as you can draw out the timeline and chart, that's enough to meet the requirement of your timeline planning. Right now, so timeline is done. And next you want to look at is this module breakdown and RACI allocation, right? Before I dive deeper into it, I just want to quickly touch module breakdown. We call it breakdown, but actually it's about deriving all the features from the SRS document and a feature brief, and then group them into a associated group of features. I'll explain more shortly. And the RACI allocation is more about how do you involve people into projects and what do they do. So yeah, first thing off, this module breakdown is verb noun mining. It's a mouthful, and why is the word mining here? So basically what you do is just go through the feature brief, right? And then you find out things that sounds like an action and followed by a noun, an object. An example will be, a good example I have here. Yeah, okay, sorry, I missed this one, but just quickly touch on it. Is basically you look for something to do something to something. Very easy to recognize this pattern. And I have an example that comes after this. So one good one is here is mostly accounting or banking related, is users can upload a receipt for reimbursement. And then with this, they form a very specific, smaller features that comes from the more general feature brief, right? Of course, at the same time, it's good to sort of allocate roughly what this feature is related to in general, right? Because you don't know what domains you need to tackle with, but you start to assign something you think is relevant. For example, the first one is about receipt, right? Then maybe you see another one that is to upload a banking statement or whatever, something like that. Maybe then you change this to something like upload financial document. The point is about grouping something that are very related together so that later we can plan the work to develop or to deliver these kind of features at the same time. Okay, so that is the verb noun mining. And once you have all this listed out, you have clear idea of actually what to do, because basically a so-called atomic feature that is listed there is basically a to-do list. So when the developer receives this, they know exactly what to build, right? So this is what I mentioned earlier, 3.2, building the so-called feature module matrix is basically grouping all the atomic feature together and form into a module. So like just now, I mentioned about uploading financial documents, because financial documents does include bank statements, receipts and whatnot. And here I have other example. I think this one most people can relate is user login. So when you go to the login page, user can log in, user can reset password, can create account. All these things falls under the module of authentication, right? So we derive all these things from a feature brief, put them together and group them together like this. Okay, so yep. With this done, you have to do the next thing here, that is to do the t-shirt sizing and RACI ownership. But first, what is t-shirt size and how come t-shirt is involved here? I'll explain why. So as you know, right now, probably, we're still very early in the project planning stage. We haven't even started thinking about, how the mobile app look like, what color we use, how the user flow from login to what page, right? But just based on the requirements alone and based on the project leader's experience, we roughly want to estimate the effort, the work we need to do to produce that module, right? And that's why we generally use the agar-agar estimation here with the t-shirt size. And take, for example, here, size S maybe can be just 2 days and L can be 5 days. But depending on the scale of the project you're doing, S can also mean 10 days and L can be 30 days, right? So this is based on your project basis, but different t-shirt size. So at a quick glance, someone reading your document or reading your timeline planning, they can see, oh, some things seems like very fast can be done, and some things seems like we need more time or need a lot more people to help in the execution of the work. Okay, then after all these things are done, you will have to go through the RACI. So what are they, right? Just quickly go through. The R stands for responsible, and these are the most important people, actually, I would say. These are the people, in our case, tends to be the developer, the UI UX designer, the front-end developer, and back-end developer, these kind of people. They are the people who are responsible for all the features given to them. And A stands for accountable. I must say, these are the people who may not do the actual work, but they are the people who answer if something goes wrong. And here, a good example will be the engineering managers for these developers, or project manager, for example. C consultant are people who don't actually involve in the execution work, but these are the people you go to for expert opinion. I would say example, let's say I'm the sponsor for this project. I want to build a fintech project, but I'm not from banking background. So maybe you involve someone who work in the bank to advise you on what is the right thing to do, what is the right way to design the credit card functions, what are the rules that you must respect while you're doing this so you don't break, maybe what kind of things that you must report to Bank Negara and whatnot lah. So basically the idea is that, right? So consultant tends to be the people who are expert in this field. And finally, I is the informer. So it's all about communication. It's about making sure everybody who are interested, who are involved in this project that you're doing, they know what you are doing and what happened at different point of time. So that's where it comes the RACI. So ultimately, it answers one question, right? Or it avoid a problem that is we don't know who is supposed to do what. So with this in, there will be always someone you can look for a problem or things that you need answered. All right, so teacher sizing we covered, RACI we covered, and we're done with the part 3 and come to the fourth section, which is the quick sketch wireframes. So I'm going to pause for a while. Is everybody okay so far up to section 3? Okay, good.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So we'll jump straight to wireframing. Okay, wireframe. What is this about? And as what you can see on the screen here, is just a drawing of the application we want to build. And basically, this is just to, before we start building an actual mobile app, even though if it's a dummy one without the database and everything, it will still take time. So we don't usually start by just building an application for testing. We start drawing it out and see whether the design we have is something makes sense or not. So help to visualize the feature we want to build, help to visualize the flow and the design that will become our prototype at the end of the day. So I'll mainly go through how to do this in this section. So for the wireframing, we usually call it the basic, the box sketch. So like for example, mobile app, everything is mostly in a box format. From the screen as a big box to a banner to a card, is from big box to small boxes. So through this, we will have to place the boxes around and see how it looks like for the different pages of our apps. From login to the maybe, I've been talking about fintech, right? So from login to the banking dashboard to the deposit section to the credit card section to the settings section and whatever. So basically you sketch out and try to imagine. Yep. Okay, so this is important. This is where you will need to communicate with the team, especially UI UX team, to make sure that sort of lock down the design for later discussion, because you need to confirm a series of all these design and the screens you're going to build before you can go into the next few steps. That is to confirm the flow and confirm the design. Otherwise, there'll be no official document to reference. So let me repeat myself again. So at the end of this thing, you produce an official document that actually the front-end developer can officially use, right? So a sign-off document to build the app, right? So that they won't just suka build according to their own liking. That's the important point. And here I am pointing out that one of the very common tool that you can use is Figma. It's take quite a bit of time to learn, but it's a very, very useful tool to help you build this wireframing stuff. Right. On this page, 10-point usability sweep. I want to introduce this guy, Jacob Nielsen. Who is this? It's an American computer scientist. Yeah, although he's a computer scientist, but I think he's most famous for being a UI UX expert. And he's the one that came up with these Nielsen's 10 usability heuristics. What are they, right? Let me jump back to the design a bit. So when you design something, probably the person who designed it also just put it out from the imagination. But how do they know whatever they design is something the user will love, right? So you don't know until, most of the time, you don't know until you send it to the user's face and tell user, hey, can you look at this and see whether it's something that you're okay to use, right? And there are hardly this kind of scenario where we can actually send a wireframe for the user to see. So we use this Nielsen's 10 usability heuristics to help you guide. You follow these rules to estimate or to challenge your design to make sure they follow these standards, and these standards are well studied to more or less meet most of the users or to most of the users liking the normal way, the most accepted way of using a particular application or a certain design. Yeah, here example I have here is using the 10 items in the 10 rules in the previous screen. You can derive a bunch of these questions and use this question against your wireframe design, right? Look at your screen, look at your design, look at the boxes, and ask some of these questions one by one and say, do they meet this, right? For example, here I like point number 2, very simple one, right? Would a first-time user understand every word and icon here? Because I would say sometimes when developer build things, they forget about the layman, the people who don't understand coding, the people who don't understand UI UX term. So they tend to use certain design or certain words that normal people like you and me maybe don't understand. So it's an important question to ask. So there'll be an example I want to share here. The rest you can explore a bit. Later on, if you have any question, you can always come to me and we can debate a little bit there. Okay, this is an example of what I would advise you to do. You take your sketch, you go through the 10 rules, you go through some of the questions, Where you find is breaking the rules, you can mark the violation sticker there. It's just a recommendation, not a must to follow. But this is a very good way. You mark it so that you can then do the next thing. We call it the two fixed loop. Well, actually, two fixed loop is not important here. The most important is you review the design again. You design the first time, you find problems in your design, then you go back to the drawing board with your designer and say, these rules are violated. Can we improve upon it, right? But why we call it two fixed loop is because of this part here. Designs can hardly get perfect. So because designs are arts, right? It's very subjective. It's hard to achieve 100%. Hence, we generally advise you go through 2 times, right? If after 2 times you still have some things that still violate the rules, but you don't know how to change, you can perhaps go through third time. If not, after third time, you should stop. If there are still problems there, you know what, just leave it. Don't let this process hang you too long from actually building the app. Because when building the app, you will have even more insights onto how the app should look like, right? So here is the two fixed loop about. We have finished the wireframing part, and we come to the final section of our prototyping topic today. And it is to draw user flow and catching errors. Now, I want to mention that this is about preparing the developer blueprint, right? It's something you use to help yourself understand the flow of the product that you're building from screen 1 to screen 2 to screen 3. How do they work together? And then finally, from this, you produce a document, a flow chart, we call flow chart, that you can pass on to the developer to follow this and build without mistakes. So yeah, what is the user flow, right? It's basically, how do I put it in a very simple term? It's from a starting point to an ending point and what happens in between. Maybe a good example is, my same example with the banking app. Whenever you start to use your banking app, you start with the login screen. Then after you log in, you should go where? Go to the home screen or go to the settings screen. If you go to the home screen, what are the options? You can go to credit card functions, or you can go to deposit functions, this kind of thing. So it's about all the possible starting flow to ending flow of using your application, right? Whichever flow that you do, it must always come to an end. So for example, you start for the credit card, maybe you check your transaction, then you go to pay your credit card. And after paying your credit card is what? Exit the application or close the application. That will be the end, the proper end, right? Generally, when we do this kind of thing, we start with drawing out the happy path. Happy path means everything that works. But I would say this is only the starting part. The next important part, and also one of the harder part, is to add the error branches. What it means is that throughout all the flow that you have built, you need to figure out at any point inside your flow what can go wrong, right? Why this is important is because what goes wrong spoils the user experience. When user is not happy, they will not come back. But some of the problems that you encounter here, you cannot avoid. So one of the good way is to find them out and make sure you can at least handle them or point the user to somewhere that they can get help with. So for example, here, let me point out off fail. So let's say if you log in and you keep failing, you think that your password is correct, but after a while your account locked. So when your account locked and they don't show any message telling you to look for email or call the bank center or call the bank numbers to figure out what to do with your account, then I guess it would be a very bad experience at the end. You will not know what to do with your account. You're stuck there, and perhaps you will just totally stop using the app entirely. Right? This is where I'm touching again. The keyword is checking reachability and recovery. So you can focus on the big word here. Right? Every screen must lead somewhere and let users recover from errors. Right? There will be from a starting login screen, it must always lead to the next screen until the end of using the product entirely. Okay, so that's what it means. So whenever you or the user face some kind of error, for example, I give another example other than a login. So for example, when you go to see from login to see the credit card dashboard, to view one of your credit card, and you click on a credit card, it doesn't do anything, right? So this is a problem. The screen doesn't lead anywhere. But usually this is not design problem. Usually in real case, these tend to be server problem where the server is down and the app is trying to call server to retrieve the credit card details, and the app is not able to get it, the server is not responding. So in this time, you should let user recover. So you should at least show some error message, for example, to tell a user say, hey, credit card service is not available now. You can exit and come back later when our server recovered. So at least the user is not thrown was not shocked into guessing what is happening to the app, especially with banking, where these kind of things are extremely important. Okay, here I'm giving example or a guidance lah, at least, right? Not a must to follow, but what you should do most of the time is to really draw out all your path, your flow, including the good one and the erroneous one, or the one with all the problems, all the possible errors included, and print out the entire thing. Just print it out, put it on a table, sit around together with all your partners or your team, and go through every single point of it. Look at every single point and study what can happen, what good things can happen, what bad things can happen. If bad things happen, what can we do about it? Just go through this. 100% guarantee you will deliver a very good experience for a user. And finally, you want to package all these things together, all the user flow that we talked about, including the wireframes that we produced earlier, including some of these feature documents that you want to do them together, tie them together, and then send it to your developers way. Because ultimately, your developer is the one that will be building it. So you definitely need to give them enough idea of what you're building. Otherwise, they may build something they can build, but they may build something not the way you want it to be. So it's always good to give a big picture, then zoom out to exactly the technical things they want to build. Right? I have an example here. Some of the technical documents, we call it a UML chat, where tends to be needing generally people with a project or app design background to produce a flow chart that looks like this, that will carry a lot of information to tell the developer which point should do what and how do they respond in a proper document. And these kind of documents tend to be something that important or the accountable people will sign off and pass on to the responsible people to do. All right, that is the end of my lecture today. Thank you very much. Next, I'll be handing out information sheet for your reading. So I'll give you about 5 minutes to go through. Okay, 5 minutes is up. Let's go to the next one, Q&A. Is there any questions from you guys after going through the whole lecture today?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, Jaden.
What is the main purpose of creating a prototype before the full development?
I would say the easy answer is to save money lah. So at the end of the day, you want to test an idea, right? Prototyping is about testing an idea. You want to test it in a very cheap way to make sure it works. Only then you invest more money or more effort into making it a real product. So there are a lot more other good benefits from this, but the key thing to remember is to fail in a cheap way or save money.
Okay, thank you. I have no more questions.
Okay. If no more questions from the ground, we'll go to the next part. It's my turn to ask you back the question. Right? Why is building a prototype considered essential first step in modern days of app development? Is there any taker for this question?
Okay, let me try to answer this.
Yes.
I think it is to get the user feedback, quick, rather than waiting for weeks to know whether it is doable or not.
You hit it on the mark. Yes, it's indeed one of the few benefits that you have here, and that is to review the gaps, basically, right? So that you don't waste time also, because time, I would say, is also equal to money, right? So if you spend 1 year doing the wrong thing, it's also 1 year of time and money lost. So finding out the errors or finding out the problems early is also very important. That's why prototyping, it's something very cool to do, I would say. Okay, thank you, Mika, and thank you, Jaden, for these very lovely interactions. Let's go to the next part. It's a time for you guys to do your assignment. I'll be handing out the assignment to you guys, and I'll just give you about 5 minutes to answer them. Okay, 5 minutes up. Let me collect the assignments back from you guys. Thank you for the work there. And before we end the day, let me just go through what we have learned, summarize what we have learned today, right? So from the time we spent together, we talk about establishing the requirements for the prototype. We talk about how to plan the timeline. We talk about how to set up or create or break down the features and group them together into the associated or related module. We talk about what framework to use to associate our work to the people and each their own responsibilities in this project. We talk about drawing wireframes and visualize our feature. And we talk about drawing user flows to catch potential problems from the user experience that we're trying to put into this prototype. But if you ask me, we can really crystallize this learning into one short sentence. That is turning requirements into timeline, scope, tasks, and flows. That will be all for today. Thank you very much. And I have next lecture on the AI agent assisted application development. It will be taking place on the 5th January next year, 9:30 in the morning at Subang Jaya. Hope to see you guys there. Thank you very much.